Hi, I'm Alistair McClarmont, Director of McClarmont & Associates Immigration Law Specialists. Today is Thursday the 4th September, and the Minister of Immigration, Erica Stanford, has announced new rules to strengthen deportation and immigration compliance. Now, the purpose of these rules, as the Minister has stated, is to help grow the integrity and trust in New Zealand's immigration system. So what I'm going to do is do a brief analysis of the Minister's press statement, and we'll talk about what this really actually means. First of all, what does it mean by the integrity and trust of New Zealand's immigration system? Basically, that means that the government creates the rules and therefore they have the right to enforce the rules. Now, that means that if the rules are discriminatory, or if there are loopholes in the rules that create opportunities for exploitation, or even if the rules punish innocent victims, such as children born here to undocumented migrants, then the integrity of the immigration system means those victims should be punished. Those people who are jeopardized in some way in being able to continue their lives through a system of rules are able to be punished and deported because that's what the rules say. Second thing, the Minister has announced a new amendment to the Immigration Act to come in later this year, and some of the purposes of this amendment include such things as ensuring that the provision of false or misleading information can trigger deportation liability. Basically, what this means is that rather than addressing significant issues around how, in particular, offshore education agents use false and misleading information in student visa applications to enable students to arrive there, it will always be the victims who will be punished. So rather than the government addressing failings in the system as to how it is that agents who send either students or workers or visitors to New Zealand can get off scot-free by providing the false and misleading information in online applications, these rule changes will reinforce the principle that it is the victims who are to be held responsible. They are the ones to be punished, and they are the ones to be deported, because it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot easier to blame those people rather than actually fix the flaws in the system themselves. In a similar way, the Minister has announced that an amendment to the law will expand the definition of when a visa is considered to have been granted in error. So by expanding this definition of a visa granted in error, that will then enable Immigration New Zealand, who have made a mistake in granting a visa, to then deport the person who has that visa. Now, that mistake may come up, sometime later. It may be that the person has arrived in New Zealand, starts a family, begins work, settles here, but if Immigration New Zealand use an expanded definition of what their own mistakes are, then they can rely on that to deport that person who has received the visa because of Immigration New Zealand mistakes. So again, rather than trying to improve a system to ensure that Immigration New Zealand don't make administrative errors, it's just a lot easier to blame, punish and deport the people who are the recipients of those mistakes. Changes in the law will also increase the penalties for migrant exploitation. As the Minister has said in her press release, migrant exploitation is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. But again, rather than addressing widespread concerns about how immigration policy and immigration law itself enables exploitation, creates opportunities for exploitation, creates loopholes in which employers, agents, advisors and other lawyers can use those loopholes to defraud the victims. Instead, it's just easier to blame all of the exploitation problems on particular individuals and to punish them rather than addressing those flaws in the system which enable the exploitation to occur in the first place, whether it be exploitation in the student visa system, whether it be in the work visa system, or whatever type of visas that there are in which migrants become exploited, it's just much simpler to blame them, punish them, and deport them, whether or not you're an employer or an employee, rather than addressing the flaws in the system itself. In addition, the Minister has announced that the new amendments to the law will expand deportation liability for up to 20 years for those residents who commit serious criminal convictions. Now, let's think about this for a minute. 20 years for potential deportation for a criminal offence, which again weakens the ability of Immigration New Zealand or the Minister to consider that human beings sometimes make mistakes in the past, and then they are rehabilitated and they go on to leave good lives with family and community and contribute to society. And it's that recognition that people do actually change that we give to citizens within our own criminal justice system. Our whole system of criminal justice in this country is based on the idea that we need to rehabilitate people and that people rehabilitate themselves and go on to be very good members of society. But that right is now only for citizens, not for migrants. If you've come as a migrant, it's 20 years you're still going to be punished for a mistake in your youth. You could commit a crime when you're 15 and you still be subject to it 20 years later at 35. That's not something that we punish our citizens for, but we only punish migrants for this. They're not afforded that same privilege of redemption, which is so central to our Christian-based system of morality and criminal justice, but instead it makes migrants as less worthy of that level of humane consideration, and again expands the divide between us and them, separating migrants as somehow different and less worthy of moral recognition than New Zealand citizens. On the whole, these changes are not particularly substantive. It doesn't really change the direction or the force of our current immigration laws, but what it does is really buys into that same narrative that we see through Donald Trump in the United States, through Nigel Farage in Great Britain, and through many other Western European countries, with the rise of anti-migrant rhetoric, where it's migrants who are blamed for the society's ills. They are the ones that need to be punished. They are the cause of the problems, which is much easier to identify a group within society as being the cause of the problems, rather than actually addressing those root causes themselves, rather than actually fixing the system to ensure that it's equal and fair for everybody. It's just simpler to blame the migrants, because that seems to be what the population demands, is they want a scapegoat, and migrants are that scapegoat, and that really, to me, is the consistent theme of these changes.